resolution to them. Get it on. How long things are
Oh.
Yeah.
I just I didn't want you to
Good to go time-wise.
wake up.
And I take it that happens, so you don't have to go for them.
In my 30s.
It'd be kind of awkward.
I have a great result. We were flying somewhere to the hospital with my course. It's flying plane. And I, leadership officer. And he's leading over with his number as he's flying. And he comes to say that my body falls asleep.
That's scary. It's probably like scared to death, like, what's happening? Like emergency.
Yeah.
That is hilarious.
Yeah. So, anyhow.
Well, that's funny. I don't know how long I would wait. You know, it's kind of like looking at the person. If you have the mic and the headphones and all on, you could just be like, so pilot, how much fun?
All right, council could get seated and we'll get started.
Great, this is what was.
This is Mayor Bob. I'm in the new community room and want to welcome everyone in the audience. Thanks for joining us tonight, and thank you for everyone joining us online. First thing I'm going to do to officially open our session is request a roll call of all council members. Bessie Jo Wagner, would you help me with that?
Certainly. Mayor Giles,
Here?
Councilmember Machezek,
Here.
Councilmember Nielsen, Councilmember Nelson,
Present.
Councilmember Thrower.
Here.
Let the record show that Councilmember Nielsen is absent.
Thank you, Bessie Jo. If everyone in the audience could join me, I'm going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before I call for a motion to approve the agenda, council, there's one change that we'd like to make. And that is the staff has requested that we move the presentation for the Idaho Road Scholar Program. That's quite an honor to see that. We'd like that to occur right after we approve the consent agenda, and Chris Malvich will help us with that presentation. So instead of waiting till general public comment. Is council good with that change?
I'm good.
Yes.
All right. Then I would call for a motion to approve the agenda with that one change.
I move we approve the agenda for tonight's city council meeting with the change just mentioned.
A second.
All right. Council, I'm going to do a verbal call on that. All in favor of approving tonight's agenda with the change that I described, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that motion carries. Let's quickly move on to the consent agenda in our package. In our packet, are there any items that you'd like removed to discuss at a later time?
Not for me.
No.
Mike, you good with the consent agenda as is in our packet?
I am, thank you.
Okay, well then I'll call for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Mike.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All right, thanks. Motion has been made and seconded. And I'll call for a roll call vote on this motion.
Councilmember Machezek,
Yes.
Councilmember Thrower,
Yes.
Mayor Giles,
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson,
Yes.
sorry.
All right, that motion carries. So our first item up under the revised agenda is something that's really fun to do, at least from the council's perspective, and I think those of you in the audience will agree. And that is, we're going to call on Chris Malvich, who is our streets superintendent, to come up and talk to us about the Idaho Road Scholar Program Certificate of Completion, and then make the presentation to Jeff Hartley and Terry Rivers.
They're both here. One's here.
Chris, welcome, and thanks for doing this. We really appreciate you honoring our folks that have gone through this training.
That's on?
Yeah.
Okay, Mayor Bob, council members, Chris Malvich, street superintendent. As you guys probably already are aware, street staff on a yearly basis are required to take Road Scholar, Roadmaster classes held by LTAC. And as the mayor said, we have 2 employees this year that have completed courses. And so we have Amanda here to present.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you for having me today. My name is Amanda Lamont. I work for LTAC. That's an acronym that engineers like to, another acronym we like to have. It's Local Highway Technical Assistance Council. And we work with local highway agencies across the state as part of a national program, the T2 program, to provide training and technical assistance. We have 2 levels of training that we offer, and the first one is Road Scholar. It includes approximately 80 hours of instruction with 7 core classes, including roadway materials, pavement maintenance, preservation, flagger certification, and 4 additional electives that are chosen by your staff. These are typically offered in the spring and fall, and we cover a large variety of topics in addition to this, ranging from safety, professional development, and the large part is construction and maintenance techniques. At the end of each exam, there's typically, or at the end of each class, there's typically an exam which requires an 80% or higher pass rate, so that we make sure that the information's going home with your staff and helping them improve their skills on working for you as your agency. Today, I'm pleased to present the first level, which is the Road Scholar, to 2 of your staff. They're both here today. The first one is Jeff Hartley. And at the Road Scholar level, we issue a certificate, a hat, and an engraved Leatherman. So congratulations. And the second employee is Terry Rivers.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We would really appreciate if I could take a picture of them with all of you standing right here. We do send that out to all of our local agencies across the state in our newsletter.
I think the lawyer in this picture.
Right there. There's one more level that we offer beyond the Road Scholar. That's the Roadmaster, and it's an additional 80 hours of instruction and going further into some of the topics. And at that point, we issue a Carhartt and we come back to you, and a Carhartt jacket, I should say. And we come back to you and present that in front of you. We also offer leadership classes. So if those are of interest, those are also available. And on our website, you can request those and we'll come to you to present those. So thank you for your time and congratulations to your staff who've worked hard to do this on their own.
So before you leave, you mentioned LTAC, and thank you for making the trip up. You're probably stationed out of Boise.
I am.
Thanks for making the trip up and being here to honor our employees. But more importantly, I want you to know City Council is really familiar with LTAC, and we have benefited greatly from your organization's help on many, many projects. So thank you.
It's my pleasure to get to work in McCall, and I'm actually staying here this weekend to go skiing. So twist my arm to come up to McCall to give a presentation. So thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Chris, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, next up is we're going to move into general public comment. And we have some folks that signed up for the public hearing later, and no one has signed up on our listing, paper listing, but we received, I believe, 3 comments. Is that
Written
correct?
comments.
Written comments ahead of time, and those have been distributed to council. And has anyone signed up to join us on Teams virtual?
Not for
the general.
the regular general public comment.
Okay,
I did want to mention that Councilmember Nielsen has joined the meeting.
great, great. And, okay. Councilmember Nielsen, thank you for joining us. And I hope you can hear all the proceedings, and we'll call on you just as we will be calling on Councilmember Machezik tonight. So thank you. All right. Just one quick question. Did council receive those 3 comments?
Yes.
Public
Yes.
comments, general?
Yes.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Next up on our agenda is the report section of tonight's meeting. And this includes report out from Chamber of Commerce, and then there'll be time to ask questions about any of our department reports or council reports. So Sheila Francis, are you here in the room or are you on the screen? Sheila is the Executive Director of the McCall Area Chamber of Commerce and Visitors Bureau.
I was expecting her to be here, but maybe something happened that she was unable to. But there is a comprehensive memo and minutes in your packet.
Okay. Did anyone have any questions they'd like to follow up if Sheila is unable to attend tonight? We could have Bessie Jo help us with that then.
I'm good.
You're good?
Okay.
Julie, good? Mike and Colby, you guys good with the
Okay.
report? Thank you.
Yep. Got it. Thanks.
Okay.
Good.
Thanks, Colby and Mike. So how about department reports? Does council, any member of council have any questions or comments they would like to share tonight about our monthly department reports for any department? Lyle?
I'm good on those 2. Thank you.
Julie?
Yeah, I had a couple. I just wanted to, there were a couple things that I thought were interesting. I wanted to point out so the public is aware of this in the community development report. And Michelle, if you want to comment on this, it's fine. I'm not looking for a comment necessarily, but I noticed that the solid waste recycling and composting RFP was repealed because Lakeshore's contract is actually not expiring until 2028. So I know there were people in our community that were very interested in the future of our waste management. And unfortunately, it looks like we're going to have to wait for that a little bit longer. And then, oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say that is correct. And just for everyone's information, we probably will be reissuing that kind of based on what we learned this round, start of in about a year or so, because we want to give plenty of time for, we might even release it sort of next January, because the thought process is that we want to give the providers plenty of time to respond, to review, and then plan for a future service date, contract date. Especially because we're looking at additional services, and everybody's been notified, and there's been a lot of people who are really concerned about it. So we did kind of send out a courtesy email for those that have asked to be informed throughout the process.
Okay, and then one other thing, Michelle, if you could just, you list here on the sustainability section, the Gem State Air Quality Initiative. I just wanted to see if you can just comment on exactly what that was and how we're involved in that. I thought that was an interesting thing on your report.
Yeah, sure. Actually, is Meredith on, or she's available? I might have her because she's been more directly involved. So I'll have her comment on that specific initiative.
Sure. Meredith Todd, City Planner and Sustainability Planner. The Gem State Air Quality Initiative was an initiative put together by the State Department of Environmental Quality so that the state within their air quality division is looking at ways to partner on federal funding or with local governments and various groups to bring about air quality improvement things, whatever they may look like. So they have a priority plan that they established that ranges on everything from farm and rangeland conservation to make sure that farmlands continue being productive, as well as sequester airborne carbon where they can, all the way to furthering the goals of the Vehicle Electrification Corridor Program in a separate part, the Department of Transportation. So right now, like everything, there's a little bit of flux going on, but we're remaining in contact with the assigned employees at DEQ to that initiative, and they will be convening more meetings with the state group of sustainability planners like me over the course of probably a quarterly cycle to just kind of chart a path forward for the municipalities and state to continue doing air quality management work.
All right, thank you, Meredith. Thank you, Michelle. And then just one other thing, I just wanted to point this out from the library's report. I thought this was amazing. Their visitation is more than tripled than the number of visitors from any other year in the past 10 years. So that's really congratulations to the library and to our community for helping us construct such a great facility that really is apparent that was needed and is being well used already.
Thank you, Council. Meg Lojek, I'm the library director. I just want to say, I was rereading my report that I sent to you, and I thought it was funny that I said in the last 10 years. I think that's just as far as I looked back. It's probably in the history of the library, right? It's a big number, and we're really, really pleased that the community is responding that way. So thank you for recognizing that.
Thank you. That's all I had.
I would like to add one, Julie, thanks for calling those out. Those are great call outs. And I don't recall ever having so many days during the winter when the NPR gave the weather report and said we had stagnant air in Valley County. And I think that's kind of a little bit of a ominous concern. And so Meredith and Michelle, and to think of the city and what we need to do to protect the air quality, and how many things air quality is tied to in terms of personal health. It's a lot. And so, Meredith, glad you're on it.
Councilmember Machezik, do you have any comments or questions concerning the department report?
I don't. Thanks, Bob.
Thank you, Mike. Council President Nielsen, do you have any questions or comments you'd like to share?
None for me at this time.
Thank you, Colby. We'll next move on to anything that the council would like to update each other on the various committees or groups you serve with. So I'll start with Lyle. Anything you'd like to share tonight?
I typically report on the amount of activities having with youth mental health. And so I would just reinforce again that there's a tremendous amount of nonprofit and community activity to support youth mental health. And what's kind of encouraging was one of the organizations, Youth Advocacy Coalition, which has a large federal grant. They're in the third year of that grant. It's $500,000 a year. And with that, they fund Hope Squad, suicide prevention in almost all the schools now between Midvale, Riggins, and Cascade. And they also host the fund Help Planet Youth. And they have been kind of indicated that there's no reason to worry that that grant is going to be removed before the end of cycle, which would really pull the rug out from under a lot of those programs. So that was positive.
It's always good news. Yeah. Julie, anything you'd like to share?
No, not this month. Thank you.
And I'm all up to speed. Thank you for sharing the library news. I heard that this morning about the attendance and those numbers. So thank you for recognizing that. So I'll go to Mike Machezik. Anything that you'd like to share with council?
I don't have any new updates. Thanks, Bob.
Thank you, Mike. Colby?
Yeah, I was just at a winter rec meeting yesterday, and out of that, found that the Valley County draft Valley County Recreation Strategic Plan is out on their website and open for public comment. So if there's anyone interested in the Valley County Strategic Plan for Recreation, it's worth taking a look. Sorry I couldn't be there in person tonight. We kind of have a really busy night and lots of stuff happening out here, so I need to stay close by just in case I get called into action.
Thank you, Colby. All right, next up, we're going to hear from Anthony Pantera is going to join us, and he is our Deputy Prosecuting Attorney. He's going to present the prosecution annual report to the City Council, which is handled by his firm, MSBT Law. And this is the 2024 review, right?
Yes, Mayor.
Well, welcome.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. First, before I get into the report, beautiful space. Love the meeting room. Very, very nice. My report, hopefully you all have had a chance to review it. That's kind of the general lay of the land. Some of the updates that I think are worth discussing that may not be set forth in detail in the report. My firm has, I personally have worked with Dee Dee Phillips. She's works with county probation to talk about services that may be available, particularly for pretrial release. It's one of my concerns is when folks get charged with like a excessive DUI or DUI second or certain violent crimes, I have an opportunity to ask at the initial arraignment for the court to impose some sort of pretrial monitoring. Oftentimes, when I ask, finances can be a barrier or an impediment to the court imposing those. Typically, what I'm asking for is something like an ongoing alcohol monitoring or regular testing. Working with Dee Dee, she's helpful and directed me to some services that can be offered that the defendant can get reduced charges. The idea here is, of course, to protect the community health and safety, making sure that they are remaining compliant with pretrial monitoring. So that meeting was very, very helpful in my estimation. It's helped maintain the health and safety of the city of McCall. As noted in my report, the court has started to use some more alternative dispute resolution mechanisms at times on particular cases, meaning like mediation with defense counsel, which is not often done, but Judge Dingledine is using that mechanism a little bit more frequently in particularly, we'll just say, challenging cases. And that's been a nice change of pace. The state of Idaho saw a shakeup in their public defender system and how that is handled. For the city of McCall, that meant that there was a change in the longtime contract public defender, Scott Erickson, over at Erickson Law. Fortunately for the city of McCall, the associate there, Joel Shearer, took up that contract and is now handling the public defender work for the, I believe for the county, but certainly for the city of McCall. The interesting thing about the change is that public defenders now have a little bit more discretion over which cases they get assigned. If they can decline representation, which hadn't really been the case before. If the only thing that would get them out of the case if there's a conflict of interest, the defendant still gets a public defender, but it would be somebody else. We've hired a new associate attorney, Jordan Walters. You may see him from time to time at the courthouse. He is a U of I grad. He's doing a great job. So far here, he has shadowed me and Jeff Schroeder, meeting court staff and seeing how things operate within the courtroom. McCall Police Department, as always, does a great job. Their work makes my job a lot easier. I can't think of a circumstance where I've had to dismiss a case because of a defect in their procedural work. They do a great job. Can't speak highly enough of them. Overall, it was a similar, 2024 is very similar to 2023. Around 150 filings. I did look back. We had 23 reports that were sent to my office for review for criminal charges. Of those, I only declined prosecution on 4, meaning the investigation was thorough enough that we were able to pursue a charge. The 4 that I declined, that was for various reasons that I prefer not to place on the record, but it had nothing to do with McCall police work. My office spent 237 hours, attorney hours that is, and 98 paralegal hours. That's down a little bit from last year. That's probably a result of the total volume of misdemeanor cases being down and having fewer court trials for infractions. Ultimately, it's a pleasure to serve you all, and I would stand for any questions.
Any questions? Lon?
No, I think your report's quite thorough, unless you were to say that any trend of a kind of case that comes before you, that there's some kind of emerging trend that you'd say stands out to you, but I didn't notice anything in particular.
Hey, there have been just candidly, there have been a couple of younger folks, and I actually might want to chat with you about some of these programs you may have available, where I've seen the same name on a handful of occasions, just kind of it was all public record, but it was a little unusual to me, something I hadn't seen in the past, somebody as young as that getting into low-level trouble, but trouble over and over and over again. So, yeah. So that would be the one trend that I've seen. Violent crimes not up. It's a lot of the same as last year, a lot of marijuana possession, DUIs, driving without privileges, reckless driving, that kind of thing. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, it did.
Okay.
Perfect.
Julie, do you have any questions?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Mike Machezik, do you have any questions for?
I don't have any questions. Thanks for the report, Anthony.
Thank you.
And Colby Nielsen.
None for me. Thanks for the report.
Thank you.
Well, Anthony, thanks for coming up here in person. Tell your firm we really appreciate a thorough report and all the good work that you do.
Thank you. I say this, hopefully I say this every year. If you ever want me to come up and give an additional report, I'm more than happy to do that. Just please let me know. Okay?
We will. Thank you.
Well, Mayor, I know that Morgan is next up. He was planning on signing on by 6 o'clock. And so I noticed it's just a couple minutes before, but I do see that he signed on now. So
he is on. Great.
Yep.
Okay. Well, next up is our fiscal year 24 audit report. Morgan Browning, I did see your face on the screen there, and thank you for joining us. I've heard behind the scenes that things went really well with our audit, and we look forward to you giving us a summary of that.
Sure thing. Thank you so much. My name is Morgan Browning. I'm an audit director with Harris CPAs. It's a pleasure to be with you here this evening to discuss the results of the fiscal year 2024 audit. My plan is to go over an overview of the audit results. We issued 3 reports that I'm going to go over. I'm going to highlight some significant changes in the current year versus the prior year, and then open it up to any questions that you may have about the audit. So the first report that I'm going to go over is the independent auditor's report. It's on pages 3 through 5. The report discusses management's responsibility to prepare these financial statements. That's management's responsibility. They're also responsible for establishing internal controls sufficient to prevent and detect misstatements in this report. So they have to have their own internal control. As auditors, our responsibility is to provide an opinion as to whether or not the financial statements are fairly presented in accordance with GAAP prescribed by the Government Accounting Standards Board. We perform the audit in accordance with the government auditing standards, and we hold management accountable to GAAP and uniform guidance reporting requirements with respect to federal awards. So the opinion that we're rendering for fiscal year 2024 is an unmodified opinion. It's the highest level of assurance that you can obtain in an audit. So congratulations to Linda and Kathy for getting a clean opinion on the audit. The next report that I'm going to go over is a report that's required by government auditing standards. That report is on pages 63 through 65 of the audit. There's two parts to that report. There's internal controls and there's compliance. Again, management is responsible for internal controls. We're not the controls as auditors. Our responsibility is to understand the city's internal controls and to perform tests to ensure that controls are implemented. If during the course of those tests, we uncover internal control weaknesses, either to design or to implementation, or if we have a lot of errors that we noted during our audit, corrections and adjustments to the financial statement amounts, this report would reference findings. In addition, government auditing standards require auditors to test compliance with grants, contracts, laws, and regulations. So if during those tests we determine there's non-compliance, this report would also reference findings as well. So for fiscal year 2024, I'm pleased to report that there were no internal control findings or compliance findings noted for the city of McCall. The third report that I'm going to go over is a report on compliance for major programs. It's on pages 65, 66. These are major federal award programs. So as auditors, we're required to test major federal programs and for compliance and actually issue an opinion as to whether or not the city complied in all material respects with the requirements of that program. We tested the Economic Adjustment Assistance Program, which funded in part the Downtown Core Phase 3B construction, which is recorded in the Local Option Tax Fund. So that's the program we selected. So again, management's responsible for compliance, and they're also responsible for establishing internal controls to ensure that compliance occurs. For fiscal year 2024, we are issued an unmodified opinion on compliance. Again, it's a clean opinion on compliance. So it's our opinion that the city complied in all material respects with the Economic Adjustment Assistance Program requirements. So in summary, you're getting a clean opinion on the audit and no findings noted. Now I'm going to touch on some financial statement highlights. If you turn to page 10 of the audit, that'll show you the statement of net position in comparison with the prior year. It's a table that I'm looking at. One thing that stood out in the audit is that total assets increased to $144 million as of the end of fiscal year 2024, compared to $134 million at the end of fiscal year 2023. Most of that increase was attributed to an asset account called construction in progress. There were some major construction projects undertaken during the fiscal year, which accumulates into an asset account. And then once those projects are complete, depreciation commences. So the ones that really stood out this year were the library expansion. That was $4.4 million. And also the Dinehard Lane road construction, that was $2.1 million. And there was also the Lost Street, First Street construction. There was about $1 million in there. So construction in progress was the main reason that your assets increased from the prior year. Your capital assets, infrastructure, buildings, equipment make up 72% of your total assets. Your current liabilities are $8.7 million and your long-term liabilities are $10.2 million. The focus on the statement of net position is the actual net position, which is the difference between your assets and liabilities at the end of the fiscal year. That number was $117 million, of which $98.3 million was tied into your capital assets. That's your capital assets minus your related debt. and 108,000 was restricted. So that pertains to debt service and highway user fees. The remaining amount is 19.1 million citywide. So that was unrestricted. That's what I'm calling the liquid portion of your net position. So that was the major changes in your statement of net position for the fiscal year. Next, I'm going to go over the statement of activities. That's on pages 11. Pages 11, there is a table there that compares your revenues and expenses from the in the current year, fiscal year 2024 compared to 2023. As you can see in the table, your revenue increased to $28.6 million. That's up from $25.3 million in 2023. Most of that increase was attributed to capital grants and contributions. The one that really stood out was a $2.3 million private donation from McCall Library Foundation for the library expansion project. All the other categories remained fairly comparable. You'll note that your expenses increased to $20.4 million in 2024 from $18.7 million in 2023. Most of that is attributed to salary increases in inflation. And your overall change in net position was an increase of $8.2 million. Next, I want to go over your general fund budgetary cushion. If you turn to pages 22 of the audit report, you will see fund level statements. And the item that I like to focus on when I'm looking at fund level statements is the general fund balance at the end of the year. If you see on page 22, your general fund balance is $8.3 million as of the end of September 30th, 2024. Of that $8.3 million, $6.3 million is unassigned fund balance. So that's free from any restrictions or encumbrances or anything like that. I like to compare that number to the next page, which is on page 24. And that page shows the total expenditures for the general fund, which were $6.9 million. So the ratio of your unassigned fund balances to total expenditures in the general fund is 90%. So your fund balance is a relatively high percentage of your total annual expenditures, which is it's a lot higher than what I see in my other cities and other audits as well. So I don't know that there's a right answer or wrong answer to that, but you've got a pretty significant cushion there to weather a storm or any unforeseen expenditures. That ratio in the previous year was about 100%. So that's a very healthy, the city of McCall has a very healthy unassigned fund balance relative to its annual expenditures is what I would conclude by looking at those metrics. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions that you have concerning the audit.
Great. Thank you so much for taking us through that really quickly and having a thorough report. I noticed that, so we're going to have time for questions, but I noticed the next step, if we choose to make a motion to accept it, which is the recommended action, that these audited statements will be uploaded to the State Controller's Transparent Idaho website. Is that correct?
Yes, that's part of the process that is undertaken. And, we also, your audit goes to the Federal Clearinghouse as part of the single audit data collection form filing so that you can get the good results in there and people can look you up and say, what do we do with your federal money? Well, here's a report. But you are correct in that, in stating that.
And I also observed in the last 5 years, that this is our best audit, I believe, that we've received. So it's really good news. Thanks for sharing all of that.
Yes, and I appreciate that.
Council, any questions you have for our auditing firm?
No questions, but it's actually surprising. It's an interesting read. It's kind of hard to follow all the numbers, but there's a lot of things. It's kind of like a State of the Union address in a way told through numbers. But the things you put in there, like the significance of lot and short-term rentals and different ways that income can be forecast. So, thank you very much. That's my way of saying that.
Great. There is a lot of information in there, and you can look at it through a lot of different lenses for sure.
Julie?
I'm not going to question a good audit.
All right. Mike?
I don't have any questions. Thanks. Thank you, Morgan, for the report and the work.
You're welcome.
Colby?
No questions. Thanks for the report.
Well, Morgan, thank you very much. It's our pleasure to be able to make a motion to accept this audit report. And thanks for all the work behind the scenes. And our staff, I know, was heavily involved. We even were able to have Linda Stokes help with this, even though she had retired. And I thanked her before coming over to the meeting tonight.
Yes, I appreciate Linda's help and Kathy as well. We were out there in McCall for, a week or so, a week and a half, and they were very responsive and we worked through quite a few numbers as well. So appreciate their help.
All righty. Well, the recommended action is to accept the fiscal year 24 audit report. Would someone make that motion, please?
I move we accept the fiscal year 24 audit report.
Thanks, Julie.
Second.
Thank you, Lyle. All right, motion has been made and seconded. Will you please conduct the roll call vote?
I think Morgan has something to say.
No, I was just going to wave my hand and say goodbye. Sorry.
Councilmember Thrower,
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson,
Yes.
Mayor Giles,
Yes.
Councilmember Machezik,
Yes.
Councilmember Nielsen.
Yes.
Okay, that's everybody, right?
I think so.
All right, that motion carries, and thanks again.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Well, have a good evening.
You have a great evening. Please tell your team thanks, that we appreciate it very much.
Yes, will do. Thank you.
All right. Those are words, council, and I'm sure the public loves to hear clean opinion. So we're moving into another topic that I think we are all very pleased with what we have in our packet, and it's very complete. And that is a planned unit development preliminary plan, subdivision preliminary plan, and some discussion about a development agreement. And this is a public hearing. Meredith Todd is going to lead us through that. And this is a development agreement and a housing opportunity for the St. Luke's Memorial Hospital District and the St. Luke's McCall Foundation. To put it simply, a great opportunity to provide housing for employees that should be living in our city and not having to commute really far away. So we're very proud of the progress that these two groups brought to us tonight. And Meredith, give us the briefing. I suppose I should open the public hearing first. Is that right,
please.
Bessie Jo?
Yes, please.
So I'll make a motion to open this public hearing. And is there anyone that would like to second that motion?
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor of opening tonight's public hearing, please say aye. Aye?
Aye.
Okay, so that's unanimous. The public hearing is officially open. And Meredith, please lead us through the discussion of this great opportunity that's before us.
Sure. And I'd like to confirm that all public noticing was completed in compliance with the code specifications in the newspaper mailing and posting on the site. We've had affidavits returned to make sure that that did happen, and that's reflected in your staff report. So my name is Meredith Todd, City Planner and Sustainability Planner for the City of McCall. As Mayor Bob stated, this is a planned unit development preliminary plan. subdivision preliminary plat and development agreement application for a townhome style development just off of South Mission Street, south of the in progress school housing development. Tonight, your directions are to hopefully go through the public hearing process, enter into deliberations, and then perform a couple of decisions that have been updated in a memo that I provided to Bessie Jo to distribute to the council this afternoon, with a couple of small, some grammatical and other procedural modifications just based on the last week or two of discussions with the applicant, and I'll get into that in just a second. But fundamentally, this is an application for 38 townhome style units across 4.8 acres of land just to the west of the railroad pathway between Stibnite and the Boydston-Deinhardt extension further to the south. The units will be spread in groups of 3 and 4 across 10 different buildings, and it's an opportunity to see modular multifamily construction occur in the McCall area. The last time we saw that style of construction was for the Thompson Place condominiums. So it's a good learning opportunity to see that style in the community. The application was reviewed on January 7th by the Planning and Zoning Commission at a properly noticed public hearing. And they reviewed all of the plan unit development, subdivision, design reviews, scenic route criteria that would have been applicable at the commission level. And then because of the way that our code is structured, they make the final decision on design review and scenic route review unless there is an appeal that is filed. There was no appeal filed, so the design has the blessing of the Planning and Zoning Commission unanimously. The plan unit development and subdivision applications were recommended to the City Council for approval, with the findings and conclusions finally signed off on about the day after the packet deadline for this meeting. So you have the unsigned but not revised or ever changed version of the findings and conclusions from the Planning and Zoning Commission in your packets. And those have only changed to add the signature of the chairman and myself since that time. Details of the project beyond the size and location. There's some history within your staff report about how the parcel came to be over the last few years, as you did see a rezone that would apply to the property in about 2022, 2023. So that rezone had a development agreement with the school district associated with the parcel, with the target being to create multifamily housing on both parcels. There's been a will serve or capacity upgrade process undergone with the sewer district that has resulted in satisfying the need for sewer on those sites for R8 zoning, which is medium density residential. We've determined that that's fairly compliant with the McCall Area Comprehensive Plan that envisions either R8 or R16 sometime in the future. So going from Civic to R8 at that time and in keeping with this proposal is in compliance with that existing development agreement and the site. Further throughout the application, there are a couple of interesting twists and turns. So starting on page 273 of your meeting packet or page 7 of your staff report, I start to review the amenities proposed within the development. One is to exceed the minimum requirement of open space by a rather significant amount. The minimum amount of open space for plan unit developments is 20%, and this development proposes close to 50% open space. There is a picnic and gathering area for future use of both the property owners and passersby on the Parks Trail to be located on the southeast of the property. The Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee enjoyed seeing that as a future neighborhood park location and did not request any construction of parks amenities at this time. There will be a total of 38 of 38 housing units deed restricted with short-term rentals prohibited. So that's 100% local deed restricted housing, which I think is a project first for the McCall area. So it's very significant to see something like this proposed. especially in a neighborhood that is central to the walking pathways and all of the interconnected systems that the community provides. We're hoping to see many, many hospital workforce members walking to work because you can do so, but we'll see if that happens. I believe in further discussions with the applicant legal representative, you'll see more details relating to which tier of the updated deed incentive program will be chosen. I think they're leaning towards tier 2, but that will be brought in a future meeting when we further detail the development agreement. Another amenity within the proposal is an internal pathway system that isn't included on the transportation or pathways master plan for the community that allows wandering opportunities for both the neighborhood residents and the public who, for example, the cross-country team used to run around over those hills and ditches on their way to anywhere else. So those will still be available for meandering. It'll just look a little bit different over time. Uniquely, and with this proposal, those internal pathways are proposed to contribute to the parks contribution. So initially, we had pondered requesting to alleviate the parks contribution for this development entirely, but then seeing that there were pathways, amenities, and natural spaces available that were not requested in code, we determined that a better approach would be to include those pathways as what's considered a linear park, where you multiply their area based on linear footage, and combine that with the southeast picnic area to come very, very close to the minimum contribution for parks, which resulted in planning and zoning deferring to the Parks Rec Advisory Committee and this council on whether you are comfortable with a partial alleviation to the parks requirement, where normally you might see a request for any gap between the amount of land or facilities for parks being provided and the total amount required being covered by an in lieu fee. But the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee made motions that they enjoy the linear pathways as long as there's an east-west connection from the Wildwood condominiums that is plowed throughout the winter and available to both of those residents to access the railroad pathway. So they've said that they're comfortable as an advisory committee to the council with alleviating that parks requirement on the basis of the local housing program being a huge amenity to the community. And then finally, by nature of being entirely deed restricted, it technically counts as an amenity as we've seen it in other developments. Short-term rentals are prohibited throughout the entire development, so we will never see short-term rentals in this neighborhood. Which is always appreciated in new development. As far as variations from code, we have some of the typical ones that we see when we see multifamily, townhouse, or condominium style development. So for example, there is an alleviation to the minimum lot size individually because it does shake out to being greater than the minimum lot size in square feet when you calculate it all as a land-based average, and it is in compliance with the density for the zone. So a baseline way to envision this is how big is the building footprint, and it kind of makes sense that that's not the same size as a single family lot because it's just a townhouse. The next alleviation, similar to that to facilitate multifamily housing, is a reduction in the setback from the private right-of-way serving the properties, as well as an alleviation from the 1/2 building height to side setback ratio, which usually controls for the building height of a single-family home from any given side property line. In this case, because there's shared walls, it would be impossible to reduce the height of the building. It would have to be 0 in all places because you have the buildings touching. The next alleviation requested is from lot coverage in excess of the maximum allowed per lot for the same reason as we're recommending an alleviation to the minimum lot size. You wouldn't be able to have a very effective townhouse if you had to have 50% of the ground floor being a yard. So that one's kind of logical. The next one is to allow for greater than 50% of the longest private street facing wall to be garage door. The Planning and Zoning Commission found that this was a reasonable alleviation because all of the outward facing or public space facing facades are not garage doors. So only the interior is being garage doored with visual qualities. And that's what we like to see, is that if you're walking down the railroad pathway, you see windows and porches and not necessarily cars coming out to say hello. And then 2 more alleviations include reduction, or in this case, sort of a transfer in the provision of open space per unit. So sometimes we see like 100 square foot personal yard area on townhomes where any individual tenant can scatter garden gnomes or a bird pond or landscape to their heart's desire. In this case, that immediate area outside the building will be managed by the development itself, which, given the plan for these units is to be long-term rented individually to workforce members, there will be more consistent maintenance of the landscaping. I'm sure a bird bath or a garden gnome will still be allowed in that developer maintained landscaped area. And then finally, there is a reduction granted for the roadway widths themselves from the standard prescribed in the subdivision code, because the footprints and the location of these units still allows for snow storage easements and adequate removal of any on-street snow, as well as drainage areas. It will be feasible, just as it has been in other subdivisions where we've seen this, to have, instead of a 60-foot right-of-way, 40 feet of roadway that still has all the necessary facilities. As far as phasing goes within this development, that's a point of complexity that is mentioned within that supplemental memo that was provided this afternoon. So we figured out within the last 2 weeks that we need to hear from the council on comfort levels with the different phases included in this project. So there's basically like a 2-prong fork. There's the phasing of building construction, and then there's the phasing of underground infrastructure. So what's being proposed at this time is the development of buildings in up to 5 phases, going from north to south. I believe page 114 of your meeting packet, as well as perhaps there's a colorful one that looks like a rainbow, and I can't quite remember which page of your meeting packet it is, but it shows how they would move from north to south, getting the buildings constructed. But typically prior to that, we see the infrastructure for any given development completed before we issue building permits. In this case, all of the different utilities have weighed in on the possibility or the feasibility of phasing the underground infrastructure, including the fire district for water flows and fire protections and fire code. The city's water engineering consultant, Bowen Collins, has weighed in and provided an option for council to support a phased approach to the water infrastructure rather than seeing the entire water infrastructure being constructed in one phase, which can create additional cost on the front end and prevent units from being brought online sooner. But that is the traditional pathway that we see water construction being done in, which is one phase. And then the sewer district has provided some degree of optimism and comfort with a phased approach. So it is feasible to do underground infrastructure in 2 phases, but that's a good discussion for council to have after hearing all of the testimony and presentation, because it would be a different pathway to construction than we typically see, and it's more of a policy choice than a standard. I think the maximum number of units before that second phase of infrastructure would be possible would be 22, because the first trigger point for additional construction is based on the fire code. So that was just provided by the McCall Fire District. I think I already reviewed the parks numbers pretty well, but we're basically 0.1 acres, 0.2 acres short. So determining whether we're comfortable with a partial alleviation to the park's contribution by about 0.2 acres would be up to council. And then you have multiple engineering reviews in your packet, and I believe we have Morgan Stroud, the city engineer, on the line if you have any technical questions, especially about that phasing discussion. And then other than that, you received one additional public comment in writing earlier today expressing general support for the concept and development, but requesting support for phasing so that trees can be retained unless or until they have to go. So that was a nice perspective to see. Finally, I'll just touch on the small changes within that memo that was sent out earlier today. And someone can steal my copy in the audience if you need it. But the applicant's legal representative, Steve Millman, who you'll hear from in a moment, noticed within my staff report that I had erroneously included commentary about the need to put an easement over a non-existent dog park. So if you should make any decisions today, please decide to strike out condition number 5 as not applicable. And then in the expirations area below the recommended conditions of approval, I incorrectly stated, and I believe Mayor Bob, you may have found another location relating to expiration where I confuddled whether it was 24 or 18 months and how many buildings could be built at what point. So there is a recommended motion to clarify that would capture more detailed discussion on what is the correct terminology for expiration on the second page of your supplemental memo. And then the final nuance within this memo for myself is relating to your decision on the development agreement today. When we were discussing the development agreement, we came up with a pretty long list of likely revisions that would be necessary to, I believe, Articles 2, 3, 5, 6, 9, 8, 10, and maybe one more at that point. That were mostly going to be based on the council's deliberation of how the phasing should work, as well as the local housing details. And we felt that it just didn't make sense to officially ask you to approve the development agreement without having more detailed exhibits and language that will reflect today's discussion to bring before you at a future meeting. So there's recommended language or revised recommended motions within this memo towards the end on how to navigate that process, because your recommended motions in your agenda bill are no longer helpful to that direction. And with that, I think I'll stand for any questions.
Before we go to questions, I need to correct a procedural error I made. Before we even start, I'm supposed to ask if there's any conflicts of interest. Let's look at my exact language that I'm supposed to use. This is just for the city council. To ask if there's any conflict, ex parte contact, or declarations from the council regarding this application. And Bill, you could help me with this part. Since we know we have some council members, for example, that have a spouse that works for St. Luke's, that's different than the St. Luke's McCall Foundation, and also different than McCall Memorial Hospital District. Is that correct?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, I believe so. The foundation is a nonprofit organization. The hospital district is a separate local government.
Thank you, Bill, for helping me with that. So, council, anything you would like to declare?
I'll go
None
first.
for me.
Thank you, Mike. Lyle.
Okay, and I'll need to ask our city attorney for clarification, since I am the chair of the local hospital board. Now, the board is separate from the hospital taxing district and the foundation. We are not financially overseeing any of those activities or related in that manner. The only encumbrance I see potential or conflict of interest is certainly the hospital board is in a position to be an advocate and somewhat of an ambassador for this project. So I carry that hat of being well informed of meetings, but I don't have any ex parte conversations that related to that role.
So, Council Member Nelson, the question would be, first of all, do you have any kind of pecuniary interest, any monetary interest in this project?
I certainly don't personally.
Well, that would be the first thing, and then the second thing is the when you say the hospital board, are we talking about St. Luke's McCall? St. Luke's McCall has an interest in the sense that this would be used for employee housing, I believe, correct?
Correct.
And so to that extent, perhaps there is a potential conflict. The council can consider whether that constitutes an actual conflict or not. The safest play is to recuse yourself from any participation or deliberation in the discussion today. Because of your chairmanship of that particular hearing.
I think that's good advice, and with the consensus of the rest of the council, since we have all 5 of us here, that it would probably be wisest if I recuse myself from the discussion. Is that your recommendation? But you see it too?
So again, council, it's your choice. But I think given the nature of the proceeding, it probably would be more prudent to recuse yourself.
But take the prudent way.
Council, you okay with that? I need to hear from everyone. We've heard from Mike and Lyle. So before we make that motion to agree with that, Lyle, let me ask Julie, and also like to hear from Colby.
I have nothing to declare.
Thank you, Julie.
Nothing from me.
You're good? Okay.
Yep.
All right. And I have nothing to declare on that topic. So
Mr. Mayor, when a member recuses themselves from a matter, they have to leave the dais and sit in the audience.
Okay.
All I'm honored to be on. It's a different perspective.
Okay. Thanks for letting me correct that. We got that taken care of. Next up is the applicant, and Mr. Milliman, your opportunity to present. Before you do that, though, I would like to just look out at the audience and recognize a lot of people that I remember work with the foundation, work with the hospital, and also the hospital district. And thank you for being here tonight. Really appreciate it. Mr. Milliman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Mr. Nichols, Mr. City Manager, Steve Milliman, 706 North First, here representing the 2 applicants on these applications, that being the McCall Memorial Hospital District, an independent taxing district, and the St. Luke's McCall Foundation, as Bill pointed out, a charitable foundation with its own board. This undertaking is a joint venture between those 2 entities. The property is currently owned by the Hospital Foundation. The district has an option to acquire a 50% interest in that property, which would be exercisable once the preliminary entitlements are granted, and would be exercised by final decision of the district board. That's memorialized in a fairly detailed option agreement with the foundation, to be followed then by a master agreement between the 2 parties, and further agreements between them and the Idaho Health Facilities Authority, who will be helping to facilitate this for both parties, and can provide some very valuable services in the interest of trying to advance this project without either the foundation or the district ceding any control over the project. Meredith did a very good job of overviewing the project and the property. It is 4.8 acres. It is zoned R8. The proposal is for a number of units that is within the zoning allowed. There's no zoning change requested. The number of units has been approved by the Payette Lakes Recreational Water and Sewer District. So it is entitled to that number of hookups, actually 39 hookups. The project, as Meredith pointed out, is for 38 workforce housing units, a mix of 2 and 3 bedroom townhomes. Our intention is to meet the general requirements and the rental incentive program with affordability category that you carved out in the recently approved resolution. Translated into English, it means that what's really unique about this project is that rents will be calibrated by income of the tenants, with a goal of rent not being more than 30% of the tenant's income. So it will be able to accommodate a broad range of demographics. The priority being, of course, healthcare workers, but in the event there's any vacancy that can't be filled by a healthcare worker, then would move on to the categories that are prescribed in our local housing plan. The applications are as indicated by Meredith, and we are in agreement on the suggestion to continue the hearing on the development agreement part as opposed to the planned unit development and the subdivision, to allow us to do some cleanup of the development agreement and get you a final proposed agreement well in advance of your next meeting, so you have plenty of time to review in advance of the meeting. We shared the perception that although we could have probably put it together for this meeting, it really would have not been fair to you in terms of giving you ample time to review that agreement. So it will wrap in the details of the deed restriction. It'll wrap in the details of the phasing in particular, as well as some other issues typically addressed in the development agreement, which is of course then recorded and encumbers the entire property. The deed restrictions, I should back up. The intention for this project is long-term rentals. There is not an intention to sell units. So one could ask, well, why are we doing a subdivision plat? And the simple answer is to provide maximum flexibility for the foundation and the district to adjust relative ownership as actual investments come in from the two parties. So while they will start off as 50-50 owners in the property, in the event that, for example, the foundation winds up contributing more funds in the district, then by having those individual units, we can adjust ownership to correspond with those investments. Both parties have funding in hand to commence the project, certainly not to construct all 38 units. That's why the phasing plan proposes a number of phases which would be driven by available funding, with the emphasis being that the infrastructure phasing, if nothing beyond phase one was built, would be an acceptable standalone project from an infrastructure point of view. The hospital district, of course, is a taxing district. It makes its decisions annually as to what to levy. And I want to be clear here that the district has funds that have been levied and dedicated for this project. The board has declared it to be a priority. Mike Vineyard is here and can explain the board's position to you shortly. But it's important to recognize that each year the district makes a fresh assessment of what to levy and for what purposes. And the district cannot contractually commit itself to fund beyond the year and is not doing so in this project. So the phasing is important, and as will the master agreement be between the parties and with the Idaho Health Facilities Authority to assure continuity under all contingencies. Greg Tankersley's here. He has done all the engineering work, his firm has, and working with Morgan to work through the preliminary engineering issues. Meredith mentioned the two phasing plans, and and I don't know, Meredith, if we can put that revised exhibit 3 up. Okay. Let's take a minute, see if Bessie Jo can. Success?
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd seen the rainbow colored one, but the one that represents the recent plan, which is this one, is the colored one also? Yeah, let's work with this one. This is, there's a lot on this, but this is the revised site plan for the project. It shows you the configuration of the project being townhomes configured in buildings of 3 or 4 units. The water will be fed to this project from the north. The sewer will flow to the north. What that lends itself to is some effective phasing that leaves a standalone project. And so the concept of the infrastructure phasing is that the water and the sewer would be completed down to a line that's kind of hard to see, but if you look at the 2 4-unit buildings to the farthest north on the right, and then the pathway below those that crosses the road, that's essentially the line that would represent the first phase for infrastructure. And water would be brought down to that point. Sewer would be installed from that point north. The good news is that the engineers, yours and the applicants, agree that that's a doable phasing plan. They're discussing sort of final tweaks about where that main line might best go and whether there needs to be a flushing mechanism at the end of that line. But these are details that the engineers will work out. So it is feasible. It will work. Why is that important? Because it saves well over $100,000 on completing the rest of the line now, which can be spent on units. And because, as I said, if nothing gets constructed other than those 4 buildings that are to the north, that would be a standalone project with a sustainable water and a sustainable sewer system, which is always our goal with phasing, is don't leave a phase that is not a standalone sustainable phase. So that's an important one. We're encouraged that fire department, city engineers consultant, and Greg's firm all agree that that is a doable and sustainable way to proceed. And significantly, Sewer District has indicated they will work with us on that basis as well, and not require the sewer line to be completed all the way through the project. Interestingly, this was also in our interactions with the Wildwood condominiums, both in the neighborhood meeting and following up with their board on some issues. That's something that was important to them, and was brought up a number of times, is we'd like to see you not disturb the entire site, but rather disturb that which you're going to be able to build on in a phased basis. And so that's what this accomplishes. We would certainly encourage and ask that you endorse that concept as your engineers have identified to be a feasible approach. Meredith did a really good job of identifying the amenities in this planned unit development. Open space is almost 3 times what is required. And really that's when you start to hear the code alleviations, those two go together. The code alleviations, and you've heard this before, when you're going to do a townhome development with what I would call footprint lots, you're not going to meet the minimum lot sizes, and you're not going to meet some of the setbacks. What you get in return is preservation, much more preservation of existing trees, much more open space, and a much more pleasing environment. Meredith has put up some of the renderings that are in your packet. These renderings actually account for existing trees, so these are not just fictitious. This is looking from the north at the two buildings, which would be on the west side to the north, and then you're starting to see the two that are on the left, on the east side. This is just a different angle. Also from the north, you're seeing the two buildings on the east side of the project and the two on the west side, which would constitute the first phase also for construction purposes. The goal here is at this point, it's a pay-as-you-go project. It's not a financed project. There is potential with the Idaho Health Facilities Authority to provide financing, but that is not, the parties are not availing themselves of that at this point. The good news is that preliminary discussions with St. Luke's is that they will undertake and assume the management of the project, thereby allowing 100% of the rents to be poured back into further construction, which is a significant accomplishment and positive for the district and the foundation to know that those rents could be used to pour back into construction, or potentially at some point to secure financing to construct the whole balance of the project. The project is couldn't sort of more squarely fall within our comprehensive plans, goals and policies, and those are outlined in the application. But the land use goals and policies, among other things, require clustered residential developments with smaller building lots and larger open space. They repeatedly encourage local housing commitments, management of short-term rentals, infill within the city limits, compact walkable developments, and this checks all of those boxes. As I mentioned, work was done with the Wildwood Condominium Association, starting in the neighborhood meeting, following up with a follow-up meeting. If we're able to get that site plan back up, but if not, I can explain to you. They had a couple of, okay, so on this plan, depending which way you're looking at it, on the, you can see the Wildwood condominiums there internally, so on the west side of this project. And originally, the pathways that you see that run through the project ran right along that boundary between this project and the condominiums. One of their requests was to take that segment of the pathway and relocate it so that there would be more opportunity to leave vegetation along that boundary as a buffer. Another request was that a portal be constructed that is a pathway connecting into their property, which you can see there has been done. And then the third request was, please phase. Please don't go in and disturb the entire property. Instead, see if you can get the city to work with you on disturbing as you're actually able to construct. And that's why the phasing plans are really quite critical. We have an email in the record from, I believe it's Ms. Prince from the Wildwood Condominium Association, which we appreciate very much, confirming that they feel that their concerns have been addressed. There is a full traffic impact study that has been submitted at the request of the city engineer. It establishes that the net impact at build out on the Mission Dinehard intersection is less than 1%. The net impact at build out at Mission and Lake Street at build out is less than 1%. And that Mission and Forest, where you'd expect the biggest impact to be, that being the street that goes to the hospital, it's only a 2.6% impact on total traffic at build out. As a result, that study, which was done by Kittleson and Associates, very familiar with the McCall area, recommended that there were no mitigations that should be required. The city engineer has concurred in that, and that's part of her most recent letter. The code alleviations were described. I really won't drag you back through them. If there are any questions, we can certainly address them. Again, the purpose of those is maximize preservation of trees, maximize open space, facilitate the footprint lots. In the case of parks, I started off frankly saying there should be a total alleviation. This project shouldn't have to spend any money on that. through Meredith's leadership, we were able to figure out something slightly less extreme and saying, well, the pathways should count. Kurt has been great to work with. And in fact, Kurt, Meredith, and Michelle all had really significantly helpful leadership on working with the parks requirement. And the other piece that came out of it is the property that you see open down on the southeast corner, and it'll be more specifically identified in the development agreement, will be left open and preserved for use by city parks if they decide there is an improvement that they would like to see in there. So that's part of it. That left this quote unquote alleviation of the difference in the acreage, and the Parks and Recreation Committee, I believe, unanimously recommended that alleviation to the council. And the rest of the alleviations, I think, are fairly straightforward. Andy Laidlaw, who's chair of the district board and has put a tremendous number of hours into this project, all volunteer, is out of the country. He has been instrumental in, along with members of the foundation and Jenny Rumley from the foundation, in working with Irontown, a company out of Utah that would provide the modulars. This is sort of a hybrid modular in that it's entirely possible, if not likely, that the foundations and footings will be constructed, modulars placed, and then the roofs also custom constructed to assure that those two features are sound. But these modular units are, in all respects, fully constructed in accordance with building codes. And the challenge was to find a good modular company that was willing to construct in the numbers of units that the parties could commit to up front. Most other modular companies said, oh, no, we don't do projects unless it's a lot more units. They did. There is a entitlement team that I've had the privilege of working with, that Greg's on, that TJ Wilkham from Jordan Wilkham is on, that Andy Laidlaw's been very active in, and a number of the members of that team, including Tim and TJ Wilkham and Andy Laidlaw, have been on site at Irontown, viewed the work they're doing, and been very impressed with the quality of the work. And as you see from those renderings, you won't know that these are not custom built. Huge advantages, some cost, maybe not as much cost advantage as you might think, or as I might have thought, but certainly the ability to complete more units in a season than if these were custom built from the ground up. So I think a really positive development. Andy asked that I point out a few of the architectural features. Each unit has a 2-car garage with storage. Very significant, and I think somewhat unusual in the projects that I've been associated with. As I say, they're either 2 or 3 bedroom units. Each unit has private deck space. The roofs are designed to retain snow, but the drainage off the roofs is all directed away from the ingress and egress entrances to the property. A novel concept rather than having a 4-foot wall of ice to step over to get into your home. They will all be energy efficient construction with heat pumps and HVAC systems. So a lot of really sound features. Meredith has put some of the floor plans up. These are really, really nice homes. And I think homes that people will be happy and proud to live in. So that's kind of a quick run through. I think I might ask Mike if you would like to provide a little bit of a perspective from the district board, and then I can certainly wrap up at that point. Mike Vineyard is a member of the district board.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. Mike Vineyard, and I think I can probably be relatively brief because between what these two have already presented. They've actually taken a number of my comments. So I'm coming to you this evening as a resident of this area, a longtime member of the district board, taxpayer, business owner, and father in this community. And also for perspective, not just for maybe this entity, but for the general public, I've also been one of the key instigators in the process by which the district evaluates projects that we will help fund within the hospital, and have helped create a process of due diligence, financial prudence, a business case with the hospital to evaluate the things that we are going to fund as a taxing district. I've been a key instigator in formulating a group to evaluate the future of the health services agreement and the prolonged relationship of the district with the hospital. And I've also been a relatively key instigator in initiating this team that would work with in partnership with the foundation to evaluate this project and see if we could make it come to fruition through a public-private sector partnership, which is pretty exciting. So that said, I probably don't need to tell all of you that we have a significant challenge with housing in this community. The Valley County Economic Development Council, through some of their work, published numbers somewhere ranging from 700 to 1,200 units shortage between now and the next number of years, which is a pretty significant number of units that we're short. Well, that has a significant impact to the delivery of healthcare in our community. Because of that shortage, the hospital has difficulty recruiting, hiring, retaining talent, from janitorial staff to tenured physicians to come to this community to serve our healthcare needs. That impacts the delivery of healthcare not only to the visitors of this community, but to our residents, to our children and seniors alike. It has a widespread impact to everybody that's in this community. So that's why the district has taken up a position of wanting to evaluate the feasibility of this project and see what we can do to help make it come to fruition, not all on the taxpayer's dime, but in partnership with private money. So we're working diligently to find a viable public-private sector solution to this challenge. We're working within the legal framework of the Idaho Constitution and federal law, and in the best interest of our mountain community and the taxpayer. I won't get into the design elements. I think Steve and Meredith have done a great job of covering those items. Those have been key pieces along the way to make sure that we are we have a project that meshes with our community while meeting the needs, that retains open spaces and preserves the sanctity of the wooded areas that we have in and around the property that we're there. And we're working really hard and diligently to create synergy with the Hospital Foundation, the Idaho Health Facilities Association, to create a viable and sustainable project for the betterment of our community. So subject to your questions or comments, that's all I have for you today.
Thank you, Michael. So I think at this point, we'll pause just briefly and...
Yeah, excuse me, unless there's any questions, that completes my presentation.
Great.
Okay.
Great. And I was just going to remind council that we also have time programmed, as we should, for questions to be directed to Meredith or any city staff. So either Meredith or our two speakers that are representing this project. Julie, do you have any questions that you'd like to ask? And keep in mind, we're going to then move on to, this is a public hearing, so we're going to hear from the public that's gathered here tonight.
Yeah, I had a couple. For the phasing, so you have two phases for the infrastructure, and that rainbow colored thing that showed 5 phases for buildings. So the first phase of infrastructure is going to serve the first 16 or the 16 units to the north. Is the current funding that you have to build, are you going to be able to do all 16 of those units, or is that going to be separated out like in that rainbow color thing where there was a yellow for 8 units, I think, and then maybe down the line you'll have those other units built?
Thank you, Councilman Thrower. There is not sufficient funding on hand to build all 16 of those. So the intention would be to attack one fourplex building to start with. The district has the statutory authority to levy funds into what's called a sinking fund, which can be held over a year if it's devoted to capital improvement projects. They've done that. So I think the parties have funds to complete the infrastructure for that phase, and hopefully to get that first building up, is my understanding.
Okay. And then another question I had about, I think I read, or maybe you guys said, there's the Wildwoods condos. They have a informal connection right now to the pathway. Will that be maintained, or how will that change, or whatever, after you build this first phase?
Right. So in that revised site plan, it actually shows the stub out of the pathway to the condominium property. I forgot to mention that part of the parks plan that was approved by the Parks and Rec Committee is that the portion of that pathway that runs from that stub out to the railroad pathway will be maintained through the winter. The rest of the pathway.
Okay, it kind of goes down south. So even though you're only building the upper, whatever few condos, you're going to still have that pathway maintained or accessible.
Correct. And the intent,
even before you get down to building the other phases where it's located.
Yeah, very good question. Thanks for asking. Yeah, the intention would be at least that segment would be completed as part of phase 1.
Right. Okay. And last comment I had, not a question or comment, I just appreciate the comment about the energy efficiency and stuff as affordable units, whether you're renting or buying. It's also nice to have it be affordable to live there. So glad that's incorporated in your plans.
Thanks.
So before you leave the podium there, I heard very clearly that the 3 requests from the Wildwood Condominium Owners Association have been met by your proposal as you implement it. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mayor Bob, and there is an email in your record confirming that.
That confirms that. Yeah. Thanks. All right, let me go on to some other members of council. Mike, I'm going to go to you next. Mike Machezik, do you have any questions for our applicant or for city staff?
I don't have any questions. I think it's a fantastic project, and I'm excited to see it move forward.
Thank you, Mike. Colby, you're next.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. I might blow your mind, but I don't have any questions.
Thank you, Colby.
Councilman Nielsen, if you can't vote for this one, you and I are going to have a go around.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
All right, and my questions got answered, so thank you for addressing those. We're going to go, Meredith, we're going to go into the public comment portion of the public hearing, and I'm going to start with people that have signed up. First up is Ashley Brown. Ashley, welcome. Good to see you. So our general rules, if you didn't know, is you'll announce you'll state your name and address, and then please try to stay within 3 minutes and let us know what your thoughts are about this project. Thank you.
Ashley Brown, 301 North Mission, condo C2. I'm here as a resident of the community, a resident of the adjacent condominiums, and as a taxpayer, business owner in this community. I think I indicated on the paperwork that my comments are in opposition, and I want to clarify that I'm not, maybe neutral is the right answer. Mr. Milliman has answered a lot of the questions that I had today, and I do want to acknowledge how well they have worked with our community in recognizing the impact that this will have on our living space. So just a few things that I wanted to call your attention to and have you think about as you are deliberating on this. The first is the phasing. As we know, we saw as a community the impact of the McCall School District housing project on the corner of Stibnite and Mission. And my hope would be to avoid something similar in sort of decimating the current property with the bill state. Anyway, so phasing is important. I have questions just about the ownership between the McCall Foundation and the district, McCall Memorial Hospital District. Just in feasibility of the future, looking at that budget, looking at how much of the project will be able to be completed. I just, wanted to call attention to that, as well as just the preservation of the, like I said, Mr. Milliman answered some of the questions that I had, concerns that I had. Thank you.
Ashley, thank you. And as part of our process, there's an item called rebuttal. So after all the public comments are we've heard them, Mr. Milliman's really good about taking notes, so he'll be able to further address some of those concerns that you had.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Ashley. Next up is Amber Green. Welcome, Amber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. I'm Amber Green, the Chief Operating Officer, Chief Nursing Officer at St. Luke's McCall. My home address is 1040 Chris Lane in McCall. First, want to express my gratitude to Steve and the hospital district, as well as the St. Luke's McCall Foundation for their partnership with us and their investment in maintaining improving the healthcare services in this community. I feel we're aligned and joined on that mission to improve the healthcare in our community. Also like to thank the city and their employees for their help. Meredith has been a great help to us. And so this has really been fun to work with them and see this project take place. It has been increasingly difficult to hire and retain staff at St. Luke's McCall, really due to housing insecurities, lack of housing or affordable housing in our community. And in the past year, we've seen our average time to hire new employees to be as high as about 160 days, which is almost 5 months for us to fill any one open position that we have. We've also seen higher numbers of open positions at our highest, probably around 50 or 60 open positions within the hospital. And when we employ about 180, that's pretty significant for us, open positions to fill. So what have we been doing about this? I feel like we've been working on housing for quite some time. A couple of years ago, we purchased a building on 3rd Street due to the 10 studio apartments that were above the 4 retail spaces there. And since then, we've been able to fill all 10 of those studio apartments with employees that work for St. Luke's McCall, which has been fantastic and it's been helpful. It has decreased our average time to fill. It has decreased some of those open positions, but we found it just certainly is not enough. We also found that everyone else in our community has this problem, and we weren't contributing to this problem by taking away inventory that was already available in our community. So this project of partnering with the hospital district and the foundation really is going to allow us to put more inventory in the community, which will then keep our employees from taking what is left for everyone else, which is fantastic. This project is necessary for us to continue to provide the essential healthcare services and quality of care in our community. And a good example of this is we have, not recently, but within the last year, hired an ultrasound tech, our only ultrasound tech that is employed at St. Luke's McCall, but it took us 2 years to find that tech. And in the meantime, we go through, temporary personnel who come and fill 8-week to 13-week contracts. And the only way we were able to hire her is we were able to put her in workforce housing that we had. And she has since been with us for about 1.5 years, which is amazing, and hope to keep her for much longer. So very important. And I'm very grateful to these individuals that are making this happen for us. Thank you.
Amber, thank you. It's good to hear your perspective on the big picture. And next up, Michael, did you have any further comments or did you cover? Okay. All right. So that's all the people that had signed up, but I know there's a person that is joining us on Teams.
Yes,
And that is,
Ms. Prince.
yes. Is it Eva?
Yes, it is Eva.
Eva, welcome.
Thank you.
If you could please state your name and address, and then we would love to hear in 3 minutes give you 3 minutes to talk to us about any concerns you have or what your thoughts are on this project.
Wonderful. Thank you. Eva Prince, 317 North Mission, Wildwood Condos, Phase 2. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council, for allowing this time. I also greatly appreciate the foundation has worked closely with us and had met with us numerous times through various mediums, in person, online, emails, etc. What I want to bring to your attention is I am the secretary, member of the executive board of Wildwood Condos Phase 2. We are the properties that are located south on your map. My neighbor, you just heard from Ashley, that is Wildwood Condos 1. So I do not speak for all Wildwood condominiums. We are different fiscal entities. We have different executive boards, different property lines. I brought concerns and worked on behalf of my neighbors in Wildwood 2. So anything that's printed from Wildwood 2, I do not represent Wildwood 1. I know you have letters from Mr. Churchill, president of Wildwood 1, and several other of my neighbors of Wildwood 1. So I just wanted to make that clear when Eva Prince speaks, she speaks for the standalone fiscal entity of Wildwood 2, that executive board. Put that period on the end of that. I thank to Mr. Milliman. He really laid out most everything I wanted to say. Most importantly was this phasing of the underground infrastructure and roads. We have lived a lovely life watching our cross-country runners run hither and yon up through the cemetery, bikers, bicyclists, etc. We've had a beautiful property there. It has changed now to R8. The community needs this to happen, and we worked cooperatively with the foundation to have the least impact. Though these are really nice homes, as Mr. Milliman points out, they are 32 feet high. We are a little development of single and double-story homes, so any mitigation that we have been asking for seems warranted rather than having a wall of townhomes in our backyard. 32 feet high is not exactly what we've been looking at over these decades. Be that as it may, the foundation and Mr. Laidlaw, Ms. Romelli have worked with their engineers. We appreciate the stub out to the path. Everybody, both phase 1, phase 2, uses that path to access our fabulous bike path, as well as our Frisbee golf course, etc. Walk to downtown, which is what we all want to do and stay out of our cars. I hope Kurt Wolf pays close attention to the preservation of the existing trees.
Eva,
look what happened. Yes.
I'm sorry, we're at the end of 3 minutes, and
all right.
You've been very well organized in laying out your comments, and Kurt Wolf is in the room listening to you, and so thank you for your comments.
Okay, we beg you to support the concept of phasing to preserve what we have as we work communicatively with you and the foundation. Thank you.
Thank you, Eva. So Bessie Joe, I think we've gone through everyone that signed up virtually and everyone that signed up tonight, but I always like to ask, is there anyone else in the room that would like to talk to us tonight? Yes, sir. Please come up to the podium, state your name, address, and you have 3 minutes to share with us your thoughts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. My name is Bill Colpo, 1425 Clements Road, Unit 5. I was privileged to work at the hospital for 22 years as the director of imaging. And I can only echo what Amber stated about hiring before COVID. It was difficult for me to attract people, qualified people. And here in McCall, you didn't do just one modality. You had to have skills in other modalities, X-ray, CT, ultrasound. So that was important to us, and to get somebody that had those skills was difficult because of where they're going to live. You know, I was lucky when I moved here. My brother had a home that he was willing to share with me. He recruited me, and so he was stuck with me until he sold his house, and I was able to find housing. I think what's important about this is, it's a community effort. The foundation, I'm the board president of the St. Luke's McCall Foundation, that we're working with the community, members of the community, to raise these monies to be able to build this housing. And I think it's an important project so that we can sustain quality members of technical nursing staff at the hospital. I don't have anything else. Any questions from you?
Thank you, sir. And please tell me your first name again.
Bill.
Bill, thank you very much for taking time out tonight to talk to us.
You bet.
Okay, Mr. Milliman, would you heard some things tonight perhaps you'd like to clarify or rebut or at least address?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't really have rebuttal, but there are 2 things I wanted to mention. The first is, and I should have mentioned it in my presentation, was how much I appreciate the resolution that the council has approved and increasing the incentives potentially to $20,000 a unit for projects that also provide affordability. And it's meaningful, and I very much appreciate the council's additional commitment. It'll be meaningful here to help these applicants cover the costs of getting to this point, including things like the traffic study and the rest. So very meaningful. And I also, again, wanted to thank Meredith and Michelle and Kurt and Morgan for the work that they've done with us, and the leadership that has been shown to help guide through the process. And in particular, Meredith's work, she's really been a front leader on this project, and we appreciate it very much. Other than that, unless there are questions, I don't have any. The ownership model. Yeah, there are many challenges associated with the ownership model when you have a public taxing district and a private foundation. I think we now have a clear pathway for that. It would start with the 2 parties each owning a 50% undivided interest in the property, having a master agreement as to how they're going to manage that property. But a key player in this will be the Idaho Health Facilities Authority. They are in existence to work with foundations and districts on projects like this. They normally provide financing, and they're still ready to do that at some point. But they will be able, both parties will also have agreements with IHFA to assist in the execution of construction contracts, coordinating management, and assuring that regardless of what happens and when it happens, the ownership in the property will be preserved. So it starts off 50-50, as I said, to the extent that one party or the other winds up being able to contribute more money, then we will use those individual units that are platted as part of the subdivision to adjust ownership accordingly. But it will all be under the purview of a master agreement whereby the parties are endorsing the same project goals, the same management goals, making joint decisions on all construction. And that's already happening. The two parties have a working group that has met at least once a month, sometimes twice. And so that's how the ownership is going to look. Over time, it may vary from 50-50, but that's how it's going to look.
Okay. I'm glad you understand all that. It does sound pretty complicated.
It's, I'm going to say I do. No, actually, we've spent a lot of time with Christian Anderson, the executive director of the Idaho Health Facilities Authority, and with Mike Stoddard, their attorney. Had great collaboration on making sure, one, that the district is solidly, squarely within its statutory and constitutional framework, which it is, and also making sure that all possible contingencies are addressed to assure that the property is maintained and managed for the purpose that we have laid out. The deed restrictions obviously do that, but beyond that, IHFA is going to be really critical in helping both parties work together.
Okay, well, thank you. At this time, Meredith, I'm going to ask you, is there anything further you would like to share? And if so, please do it now. And then after that, I'm going to ask council if they have any questions, final questions before we go into deliberation.
I think that my only parting wisdom and advice to council would be to ensure that if you have any engineering detail questions, you remember that Morgan Stroud is online. I know sometimes with projects of this scale, we like to dot our I's and cross our T's, making sure our engineer is comfortable with the knowledge that's been spoken about. And then I would like to make sure that the council knows either before we enter deliberations or once we get there, that it's recommended that we review the individual criteria for planned unit development and subdivisions that start on page 272 of your meeting packet or page 6 of the staff report, and that your deliberation should cover those quite specifically, because we have new guiding case law on writing any decision documents where I need to hear even more specific thoughts than I already get from you, which I don't know how we're going to do it, but we're going to try.
Now, does that happen, Bessie Jo and Bill, during deliberation, or does that happen during the public hearing?
So it happens during deliberation through
Yep.
Thank you for that
But
reminder.
this is new advice right now, so I'm giving it to you in the public hearing.
All right. So, council, do you have any lingering questions or any questions at all for Morgan Stroud, our engineer? Mike?
None for me. Nope, none for me. Thanks.
No questions from me.
Julie?
No, I think she's comfortable with the two-phased approach. She's the technical expert on that, so I'm good with that.
And I have no further questions on that. Thank you, council. I think we're ready to close the hearing and go into deliberation. Let me ask each council member. Mike, are you ready?
Yes, I am.
Colby?
Yes.
Yep.
Julie?
Yes.
And I'm ready. And is that correct, Bill? We do close the public hearing before deliberation.
Yes, you can.
Okay. All right. Would someone make a motion to close the public hearing?
I move we close the public hearing.
Thanks, Julie. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Colby. Motion has been made and seconded to close the public hearing. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Is there anyone opposed? Hearing no opposition, that motion carries. We can begin deliberation. Bill and Meredith, would you help us, guide us through that? I know how to do the part about how are you feeling about this project, but it sounds like we have some specific things to cover as well.
Sure. So I can read off the criteria one by one, and then we can whip around hearing council's opinion on each of them. And then we'll find our way through and determine if we made the cut. So we can start with the planned unit development preliminary plan standards found in McCall City Code section 3.10.04. And for those tuning into the code or the staff report, that's on page 6 of the staff report. So criteria A is you must find that the underlying zoning, Title 9 of this code, and other applicable regulations under this title and Title 9 of this code are met, except as the applicant has specifically requested in the form of modifications to the standards as part of the PUD.
And
so, Mr. Mayor, members of council, does something
okay. And you're asking council to answer that, right? All right, Mike, what do you think?
Yeah, like I said, I think this whole project looks very well done and thought out, and I'm in accordance with everything.
Okay, Colby?
Yeah, I couldn't quite hear what Bill was saying.
Colby, my now I've got two mics pointed at me. Colby, the issue is whether the underlying zoning as well, which is from Title 3 of your code, as well as Title 9 of your city code, and the other applicable regulations are met in this application.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it all looks good to me, and echo what Mike's saying.
Thanks, Colby. Julie?
Yes, I believe it is.
And I believe it meets the zoning. What's the next item, Meredith?
Item B is the proposed uses shall not be detrimental to present and potential surrounding uses, nor shall they be detrimental to the health, safety, and general welfare of the public. The physical features of the site, public facilities, and existing adjacent developments and uses shall be considered.
Mike, you're good with that, right?
I am.
Colby?
Yes.
Julie?
Yeah, as a proposed residential use next to other residential uses, I think this does not create any issues.
And I concur with that. What's next, Meredith?
Mr. Mayor, if I may, the other part that goes into this particular provision is addressing the existing adjacent development. So that's things like the stub out to the pathway, the phasing to mitigate the impact on neighbors during construction, and those sorts of things would be particular findings that would be appropriate for that provision.
I agree. And it sounds like Mr. Milliman has worked on all of that, and we would just want to make sure that's documented in the findings and facts.
Sure. Well, and I think we can say that they will be maintaining the pathways to the adjacent residential units, the Wildwoods condominiums. Appears from the engineering work that the stub outs or the phasing of the infrastructure won't have an impact on adjacent properties. And yeah, I don't think it's going to be impacting their use of their property. That all the three things that
That's helpful, thank you. Okay, criteria C. The density of the planned unit development considered as a whole shall be in substantial conformity with the density of the underlying zone, which is R8, medium density residential.
And you said it does, right?
Mathematically, it sure does.
Okay. Well, I'm good with that. Mike?
Yes.
Colby?
Yes, indeed.
Julie?
Yes, I think it meets our density
Okay. So
conformity.
Meredith, there's what, 6 items?
There are
And we've gone through
3.
3. Are the last 3 something you could just run through quickly and then I could?
Mr. Mayor, you're gonna have to address them individually.
We're going to have a training session on
These are new rules, so you're not in trouble.
I'm not in trouble, but thank you, Bill, for keeping me out of trouble. Okay, let's go to number 4.
Okay, letter D, any variation from the basic zoning requirements must be warranted by the design and the amenities incorporated in the preliminary and final development plan. So this would be the conversation of weighing those balances between code alleviation specified in your staff report and the amenities being provided within the development.
Well, we've had a thorough discussion on that. It seemed like with that, we've captured that. Mike, what do you think?
Yes, I am in accordance with it.
Colby?
Seems in line.
Julie?
Yeah, I'm usually suspect of alleviations, but I think that the ones that were presented here make the project better, are maybe not necessary, but definitely make the project better, and they don't create any sort of impacts that would cause concern.
Thanks. And I concur with that one. That makes sense to me. And we've had really good, thorough discussion of that tonight, which is helpful for council. We're on to number 5.
Letter E, the final development plan must be in conformance with the preliminary plan. This is not a final plan, so that is your hint that it might not be applicable.
Oh, good hint. Okay, I think we're all good with that. Right, council?
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. F, the planned unit development must meet the general objectives of the McCall Area Comprehensive Plan, and your comprehensive plan analysis is on page 7 of your staff report. I can read it for you if you wish.
I don't think you need to read that. Michelle, do you believe it fits that? You're our expert. on
This
the-
is your deliberation, so I'm going to let you answer that.
I can go ahead and provide a couple of points. I think it is consistent with our comprehensive plan, our housing action plan, which is incorporated as part of our plans. It's providing not only workforce housing, but affordable housing. I think it meets the our comprehensive plan in terms of transportation and being able to provide walkable, bikeable, accessible pathways to meet our goals in having a good transportation plan that people don't have to rely on cars. We have the transportation study that appears to have met our goal of creating an efficient transportation system, and it's not going to impact that. I don't see anything that I think as building efficient units that take into account current technology in terms of building efficiency, heating, that kind of thing. Not only making them affordable, but also go towards our sustainable, our goals to have sustainable development. I don't see anything. I don't have anything to point out that it is inconsistent with our comprehensive plan that I can think of.
Thanks, Julie, for covering those items. Mike, are you good with that?
I am.
Colby?
Same here.
And same here. Is that all 6?
There's actually 3 more.
So there's 9. Okay, great. Let's keep going.
Letter G, Existing and proposed streets and utility services must be suitable and adequate for the proposed development. So this would be a good space to discuss council's comfort with any phasing plan approach.
Okay. Mike, you comfortable with the phasing approach?
I am.
Colby?
I am as well.
Julie?
Yeah, our city engineer has provided us with information. They've worked through a few things to demonstrate to her that the phasing plan will not be an issue, and I'm going to rely on her technical expertise on that. And I think as far as proposed streets, as I said before, I think we have the traffic study that demonstrates that the current configuration or the design of the streets is suitable for the amount of traffic that this might generate.
Thank you, Julie. Yeah, the phasing process seems very well thought out, not only from the engineering side, but just the practical aspects, and it's also respectful to neighboring community.
Perfect. Thank you. All right, letter H. A development agreement is required between the developer and city, which delineates commitments of the developer to the city and of the city to the developer, including but not limited to assurances for public and private improvements and maintenance of the same. You do have a draft development agreement that has been presented for a couple of additional modifications, so you can discuss any more modifications than we've proposed that you might like to see at this time.
And we're not making a decision on the development agreement until the end of March.
That's the recommended action.
That's the recommended action. And I think council's in favor of that, doing it that process. So can we say something like the existing agreement is fine, and then hear from everyone to see whether they want some additional things in? Is that what you're searching for there?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I think what you're looking for is that the development agreement has to reflect your decision that you make here tonight with regard to phasing and these other issues. So as long as the development agreement that is presented to you is in alignment with your decision tonight, it will satisfy that criteria.
Yeah, and I'm assuming that both Mr. Milliman and Meredith and staff will help us with that in our March meeting. So I'm good with that.
So, and the specific issues, if there's anything else besides what you heard tonight that you think needs to go into that development agreement.
Mike, is there anything else you would like in that development agreement?
No, I don't see anything else that needs to be included.
Colby?
Nope, I'm good with all of it so far.
Thank you, Colby. Julie?
I am fine with what's been proposed and discussed with the modifications.
Thank you, Julie. I'm also good with that. I think we've made a lot of progress on that.
And then criteria I is a PUD may be proposed in conjunction with an application to amend the zoning map and the comprehensive plan. No such application has been submitted to my office.
So this is
could you repeat that, please?
And so, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, this particular criteria is not applicable to this application because there's no need to change the zoning map. There's no need to change the comprehensive plan.
We're good with that.
Thank you, Mayor Bob.
Okay.
All right, and that covers the plan unit development standards. So now we'll need to do the same routine for the subdivision preliminary plat standards, of which there are 8.
Okay.
We're almost there. We're halfway there.
Lead us through that. Thank you.
All right. So criteria 1, the proposed plat. And I forgot to phrase these more as questions for you because the sentences are kind of backwards logic. So essentially criteria 1 says the governing board must find that the proposed plat is consistent with the applicable general and specific plans as specified in Title 3 of this code or of this title or of the comprehensive plan. So the question is it consistent and compliant with our governing documents?
I believe it is. Mike? what's your thoughts?
I agree.
Colby,
Same here.
Julie?
Yes.
Okay, so we're in agreement on that, Meredith.
Number 2 is the design or improvement of the proposed subdivision must be consistent with the applicable general and specific plans. So any plans that the council has adopted in history, is it consistent with those?
I believe it is with all those plans that we discussed earlier. Mike?
Yes. Yes.
Colby?
Yep.
Julie?
Yeah, I think, as I said before, comprehensive plan or pathways plan, our housing action plan, it's all consistent with those. So there's others I'm missing, but.
Thanks, Julie. So we're in agreement on that, Meredith?
Thank you. All right, number 3, the site must be physically suitable for the type of development. So that would be multifamily housing in a smattering of buildings for the zone.
I believe the site is compatible with that, suitable.
Yes, I agree.
Thanks, Mike. And Colby?
Yep.
Julie?
Yes.
Okay, so we're in agreement on that.
Okay. Number 4, the site must be physically suitable for the proposed density of the development. So your total number of units is 38 units, and it is within the R8 zone. Mathematically, that averages out to appropriate density. But your question is, do you feel it's physically suitable for that density in that area?
And I would answer that yes. Mike?
Yes, I agree.
Colby?
Same.
Julie?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it meets the open space requirements and it, that doesn't seem to have any topography issues that would make this number of units an issue.
Yeah. So we agree with that.
Okay. Number 5, the design of the subdivision or the proposed improvements must not be likely to cause substantial environmental damage or substantially and avoidably injure wildlife or their habitat.
I agree. It would not do those things, injure wildlife or habitat. Mike?
I agree. Agreed.
Okay.
Oh, I guess by the simple nature of development, I would fundamentally disagree, but for the sake of this, I agree.
Julie?
I agree to the extent this is infill and, it's an urban habitat, even though it's completely covered with trees right now, but it's a very small habitat that really, it's urban.
Okay. Number 6.
Might not be happy.
Number 6?
Yes, we're ready for number 6.
Okay. The design of the subdivision or the type of the improvement must not be likely to cause serious public health problems.
Yes, I agree, and it may help in our public health once the buildings are occupied. Okay, Mike.
I agree. I don't see any issues.
Colby?
Nor do I.
Thank you. Julie?
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
Okay, this is a really long one, so bear with me. Number 7. The design of the subdivision or the type of improvements must not conflict with easements acquired by the public at large for access through or use of properties within the proposed subdivision. In this connection, the city may approve a plat if it finds that alternate easements for access or for use will be provided and that these will be substantially equivalent to ones previously acquired by the public. This subsection shall only apply to easements of record or to easements established by judgment of a court of, of competent jurisdiction, and no authority is hereby granted to a legislative body or to determine that the public at large has acquired easements for access through or use of property within the proposed subdivision. To my knowledge, there are not public easements on this property that are being interfered with.
And Mr. Mayor, members of the council, there's been no testimony that there's or evidence that there's any easements that would be interfered with.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Meredith. So I'm good with that. Seems like we've had really good discussion on related issues like access. Mike?
I agree.
Colby?
Good with it.
Julie?
Yeah, I agree. There's no conflict with any easements.
Okay.
Okay, and number 8, you've made it to the end. The proposed subdivision must be in compliance with all other ordinance or laws of the city and or county. To our knowledge, I believe that it should be in compliance with all of the different pieces and conditions included.
I'm good with that. Thank you, Meredith. Mike?
I am as well.
Colby?
Yep, good.
Julie?
Yes.
Okay. How we doing, Meredith?
You've made it through all of the criteria, so if you have any further deliberations that you'd like to add to the record and discussion of what example this application provides to the community, you're encouraged to do so, either individually or as a group. And then just remember the secondary recommended action within your supplementary memo from earlier today relating to the development agreement that ties all this together.
Okay, so we have, each of us has either a paper copy, each of us on the council here, or a copy on your screen. There are 4 items, recommended actions, that we'll get to later after we deliberate. So we've opened the public hearing, we've closed the public hearing, we are in the process of deliberating on the application before the council. And then there is a item to direct staff to prepare findings of fact. We'll get to that later. And then the 4th item is reopen and continue the public hearing on the development agreement. Is that correct, Meredith?
Yep.
We're still on track with that? Okay.
That's correct.
So, deliberation. You said you would like to know, there were some other things that you wanted to know that maybe, like, we agreed with a lot of public testimony tonight, and so you want us to cover those so that you can place those in the findings of fact?
Yeah, I think it would be helpful for the record, for the community, for the YouTube, for the room, to hear at a non-criteria and philosophical level your thoughts about this project as a whole, either as compared to any other projects that you've seen. Don't name them, please. But philosophically, what does this do for the community, and what do you appreciate about it?
All right, I'm going to lead us off. Council was really good about addressing those 8 items, and I believe there were 9 other items that we talked about. For me, big picture, it's really important, and housing is a real need that we have in our community. So I want to make sure that that's discussed in depth in the findings of fact. This is a really well thought out project where the developer, the proponents, staff, including Mr. Milliman and others, have worked diligently on this to make sure that it complies with our comp plan, our vision, and is realistic, and that can be implemented in phases. So that's why I'm very much in favor of this project. Mike, additional thoughts, or maybe similar thoughts, or anything you'd like to share with Meredith?
No, I think I gave you the nutshell version already. I think it's a well thought out project. It's what our community needs, and I'm excited for what they're doing.
Thank you, Mike. Colby?
Yeah, same here. It's it's something the community really needs. I like all the effort that's been put in with the neighbors to ensure some development that will, work well with the surrounding area. I think it fits all of our comprehensive plan items, and yeah, it is not a bunch of vacation rentals, so that's good.
Thanks, Colby. Julie?
Yeah, I'll make 3 quick points. I think this is this project is a great example of working with neighbors that has turned out successful. although it may not seem like a huge project, I'm sure to the people that live at the Wildwoods condominium that are right next to it, it appears to be a big project. So I appreciate the applicant working about maintaining the landscaping, the trees, and separating that, or kind of having that, not having that visual, or having those trees to block the visual connection of just buildings. Also maintaining that landscaping along the pathway and that scenic route. And also connecting and maintaining that pathway between the condominiums and through the project. I think that's really, turned out really well. I know from the neighbor's perspective, change is hard, but I think this is a really great example of really listening to the neighbors and taking into their concerns and modifying the project to alleviate those issues. Another thing, just the design itself. I think it's great. This is actually the second project in a row, I think, that we've had a public hearing on where the design was really nice. It really fits into our community. It takes into consideration the topography, and I think just not only does it fit into our community, but I think it creates a really nice space for those residents that live there as well. And that's really nice to see. And third, of course, it's exciting because it does meet a real need for housing. As it was mentioned before, we don't have a project like this where all the units are dedicated to not only just local workforce housing, but affordable housing. I'm sure everybody wishes you can build it all next year, next season. I know that's not possible, and I wish you guys the best in terms of getting funding and continuing this project and to completion.
Thank you, Julie. All right, I'm going to call for a motion. We have an item in the recommended actions that were updated by Meredith Todd, and it's number 3. It starts out to direct staff. So I'm going to call for a council member to make that motion.
Right, I move that we direct staff to prepare findings of fact, conclusions of law, and a decision for PUD-24-03 and SUB-24-07 consistent with approval of the subject applications with the staff recommended conditions of approval with the following modifications. 1, striking of condition of approval number 5, and 2, updating the expiration terms for the project to be consistent with council's deliberations.
Thank you, Julie. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mike. Okay. I will call for a roll call vote on that motion.
Councilmember Thrower,
Yes.
Councilmember Machesik,
Yes.
Mayor Giles,
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, that motion carries. Thank you, council. The next item is listed as number 4, and there's specific language that talks about a reopen and continuing of the public hearing. Would someone make that motion?
I move we reopen and continue the public hearing for DA-25-02 to the March 27th, 2025 City Council meeting to allow staff and the applicant time to reflect the council's deliberations within the development agreement more clearly.
Second.
Thank you, Mike. So that motion has been made and seconded, and that involves the development agreement. May I have a roll call vote on that motion?
Councilmember Thrower,
Yes.
Councilmember Machesik,
Yes.
Mayor Giles,
Yes.
Councilmember Nielsen,
Yes.
Okay, that motion carries. We're going to move on to some other business. I think we've taken care of all the stuff for this proposal, right?
Yes, you have, and I'll be sure to touch base with Bessie Jo on actually training you on the new torture methods involved in criteria deliberation.
So again, everyone in the audience, thank you for being here and thanks for helping us get to this point. We're really excited about implementing that. Kurt Wolf, thank you for helping us on this next item. Delta James said she was very happy that you could help cover this. This is the Laura Moore Cunningham Foundation. It's a grant application to support some log repairs to the historic bunkhouse building.
Correct. Good evening, Mayor Bob, members of the council. Kurt Wolf, Parks and Recreation Director. So I've done a fairly detailed job outlining the general cost associated with this project. Again, we've been fortunate to receive Laura Moore Cunningham Foundation funds on a number of other city projects in the past. Again, the goal of this is the Laura Moore Cunningham Foundation believes it's a wonderful place to live, work, and raise a family, and anything that can help make Idaho a great place, they are usually very generous in supporting. So again, we've got an estimate. This is one of the historic buildings on a registered historic site over at the Central Idaho Historic Museum. I've been working very closely with the museum board on kind of a capital needs assessment. This one's right up there at the top of the list. They've already secured a $10,000 grant through the Idaho Heritage Trust that we can utilize as match. Within our FY25 budget, I've got both capital dollars and operating dollars. So after reviewing that and looking at some of our other capital needs to another one of the historic buildings, the 10 Bay building, and some work that our parks crew has done to repurpose some of the timber that we've had to remove from that site from the bark beetle, we're comfortable allocating a combination of those budget dollars as well to grant. And so the grant ask is, we're putting a range on here. I rely heavily on Delta James to write a competitive grant. She's been very successful at that. And so I felt I would defer to her as we work through that grant process. So the request is up to that amount. Again, relying heavily on Delta James and her talents to put together a competitive application. Happy to answer any questions on the nature of the work and what we're doing, but.
Okay, the only question I have is, do we need, Bill, do we need to have a dollar amount or a range in there? Because right now the recommended action just says we're going to submit a grant.
Mr. Mayor, the terms up to $55,300 in that motion.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Bill.
Okay, I think council's ready to make a motion on that, but if you have concerns or questions, please speak up right now. Otherwise, I will call for a motion.
What was that amount again? Did you write that down, Julie?
55,300.
Yep.
55,300?
Yeah.
Okay. I move we approve submittal of a Laura Moore Cunningham grant application up to the amount of $55,300 for the restoration and log repair work on the city's historic bunkhouse building at the Central Idaho Historic Museum, and authorize the mayor to sign all necessary documents.
Thank you, Lyle. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mike. May I have a roll call vote on this motion?
Councilmember Nelson,
Yes.
Councilmember Machezek,
Yes.
Mayor Giles,
Yes.
Councilmember Nielsen,
Yes.
Councilmember Thrower.
Yes.
Thank you, council. That motion carries. Appreciate it, Kurt. Thanks for helping us tonight. All right, we're going to move on to Forrest Atkinson, city manager, and he's going to talk to us about something we asked for as a council at a previous meeting, a letter of approval tonight of a letter from the city to state and federal officials in support of Forest Service and other federal employees.
Thanks, Mayor Giles. I'm going to try and share my screen here. So this letter was not in, just for the benefit of the public that may be watching, this letter was not in the packet. It was emailed, but it will be put into city records later and made available. So in the discussion at your last council meeting, some council members expressed the desire to, as a city, provide our support and just make key elected officials aware of our concern about reductions, particularly in the Forest Service, given their key role in the local economy, both as members of the community that live and work here, but also for the work that they do in preventing and managing wildfire, in managing wildlands in general, and in coordinating interagency cooperation between other state and federal entities on wildland issues. And the letter covers all that in a couple of pages with some detail, providing the specific context of our region surrounded by 90% forest land, heavy reliance on the Forest Service for the fire prevention that they do. The letter also talks briefly about, because I think that the Forest Service is the largest federal agency in our district, but we also rely heavily on support from the FAA for our municipal airport to support the general aviation. It's kind of amazing, but there are around 46,000 flights a year in and out of that airport now. A lot of those being fire related, obviously, but not all of them. So the letter mentions the challenges that the deep budget cuts and staffing reductions will lead to around here. It acknowledges that there's been a temporary restoration of some of those employees, but the fact that the potential reductions in force that are pending are of concern to us, and it urges the officials that we would send this to advocate for restoration of critical funding and staffing. I think importantly, the beginning of the letter also does, the second paragraph here acknowledges the importance of efforts to improve government efficiency and make sure that taxpayer dollars are used effectively. So I think it's important to acknowledge that overall that's a worthy goal, but that it should be done in a thoughtful way and in a strategic way that doesn't cause, that doesn't undermine core capabilities. And then the rest of the letter, I think, addresses what those core capabilities are. There's one edit that might submit for your consideration from from the letter that you received by email, and that's to just change the reference to make it to the current administration, to make it just more general and maybe not personalize it. And I think that that's the kind of the standard way of referring to the presidential election, the administration. It can go either way. But otherwise, just submit that for your consideration as you reviewed in the copy you received by email, and welcome any feedback or suggestions you might have.
And in our recommended action, it talks about approving a letter to the governor, chief of the Forest Service, other relevant officials.
Correct.
So I think that covers all the ones that you were.
We can talk about it more, but I think at a minimum, we would send it to all of the Idaho congressional representatives, the governor and the chief of the Forest Service.
Yeah. Okay, Mike, you good with that approach?
Yes, I am.
Thank you, Mike. Colby?
Yeah, I'm good with the approach. I think one thing that is having a major impact in our community at on an economic level, the potential for businesses that depend on the Forest Service to function. This is really just hamstringing everyone's ability to function. And not only that, it's like torturing people. It's ridiculous. Like the Forest Service has no idea what's going to happen next. And we're scrambling to try to get everything done before they completely disappear. Who knows what's going to happen to them? It's really, in my opinion, this letter is far too diplomatic and doesn't have any it needs to explain that this is really messing with our community in so many ways, and it's going to have long-term negative impacts on our economy, but not just our economy, on our forests. That the health of our forest is at risk. Never mind the wildfires; they'll continue to dump money on fire. I think that's the only thing that's probably safe. But there's the amount of recreationists we have out in the forest is growing every year, and there's we're taking away any ability to make sure that people aren't damaging our lands. And it's just a long list of negative impacts. And, if we can convey that sense of urgency somehow, it would be much appreciated.
Okay. Yeah, it is a balancing act, but thanks for your thoughts on that. Maybe there's a way we could add some of that. Lyle, your thoughts?
I agree with Colby's sense that if we make sure that conveys that there's imminent damage to the forest on this, but I think the letter is excellent in its sense that it probably has its greatest potential to get the outcomes we want. And so I think it's has the right tone to that. And then on a more personal note of what I think about it, after we determine what we'd like to do, I'd like to make a personal comment about why we find this necessary in the first place, and to kind of give voice to maybe the 42 people who experienced this. But I think that's separate from the letter, but I'll hold that my personal thought until that point in time, just make a statement. But so been made clear on that. I think the it has its best chance of achieving the outcomes we want.
Okay, Julie.
Yeah, I worked on the letter a bit. Well, I should say Forrest really wrote it, and I just got the easy task of just reading it, and both of us being former federal government employees, I think that's where the tone is coming from. I'm fine with it. If you guys want to revise it to be a little more pointed or that's fine too. I think we've covered, I think we've covered the economic, how the Forest Service is not only a major employer, but how the Forest Service's activities are important to our economic health in paragraph 3. Again, if you want to revise it more to add more stuff in, but I think most of the stuff that we covered, or most of the points that Colby made, I think we've covered in the letter.
So let me make a suggestion. This stuff is really timely. We need to not punt till the next council meeting. So I would propose that we give Julie and Forrest liberty to see if further edits or could be woven in after listening to each council member. And then that will be it, that we give authority to them to do that, and that I would have authority to sign the letter once they've done a few edits. Would council be okay with that as a motion?
Yeah, Bob, I'm okay with it. We're trying to show some support. I don't know how much of a difference we can make, but we can do what we can do. And so, yeah, I think we move forward.
Okay, Colby, you good with that?
Yeah, I'm good with that. Like, yeah, who knows what we can do or what if this will be of any help, but like we have to support our community members right now.
Yep,
I work with, you know, I'm seeing this firsthand, and it's really challenging on so many levels. So I think because, you know, we need to be as supportive as we can. Whether or not this makes a difference, we'll find out. But
right, we're at least trying.
This man can go do something to himself.
Okay, Julie?
Yeah.
Well,
Yes.
okay. So could someone make that motion?
I move we approve the letter to the Governor, Chief of the Forest Service, and other relevant officials in support of the Forest Service and other federal employees with the authorization for the city manager to amend the letter according to what we've heard tonight from the discussion, and authorize the mayor to sign the letter.
Thanks, Lyle. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mike. All right, I would request a roll call vote on that motion.
Councilmember Nelson,
Yes.
Councilmember McChesney,
Yes.
Mayor Giles,
Yes.
Councilmember Nielsen,
Yes.
Councilmember Thrower.
Yes.
Thank you, council. We're going to move on to our future meeting schedule.
Mayor Bob, can I take a minute, just 1 minute?
Sure.
And I'd like to maybe give voice to the 42 people, and I think a lot of other people in our community, make sure they were heard. And I think to give voice to what I think they state, that they feel that the letter of termination that 42 people received, that in their eyes and many people's eyes knowingly contained an incorrect statement. And that doesn't live up to the levels of respect or integrity that we think are most people would try to live up to, and that our communities do. Thanks.
Thank you, Lyle. Okay, upcoming meeting schedule. Bessie Jo, will you help us with that?
Yes. So just a quick reminder that on March 17th at 1:20 is the high school speeches here in this room. I did send calendar invites for you. And then again on March 18th at 9:35, again here, and then again at 1:20. So I've gotten some responses from some of you, and that will be really great. It's there's a lot of kids this year, so I think they're going to be really great.
And that is in this room.
That is in this room, yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And then just some things that have been added to March 27th. If I remember correctly, we will have a quorum that day. And so the finance director confirmation appointment was added to continue the public hearing for the development agreement, and then a resolution related to the Idaho Code for Condemnation related to littoral rights has been added. And then I believe that the March 28th meeting is canceled. If I remember correctly, that was the wish of the council. We didn't have anything on there, so we'd be canceling that meeting.
Bessie Joe, I just want to make sure you don't have it on there. And you mentioned you think there will be a quorum, but I will not be there on the 27th. So
on the 27th as well.
As well, yeah. Just wanted to make sure that I was the only one, or
It's likely that I'm not going to be there on the 27th. I might be able to attend virtually, but I'm not quite sure yet.
I do intend to be present on the 27th.
I'll be there on the 27th. And Lyle, you're good?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm quite sure. I may not be present, but I think I can log in.
So if we have three, can
As
we?
long as we have three, what about the
Except for-
development agreement? Can they? Okay, so three is good.
Okay, great.
All right.
And everyone good with taking a break on the 28th? We won't have a meeting that date?
Agreed.
Yes.
Anyway.
Okay. Gonna do spring break. All right, good. We got that pinned down. Thank you.
Okay. And then I sent out in the email today that May 5th would be the next joint meeting with the Valley County Commissioners regarding the area of impact. And then prior to that, on April 17th, will be a work session for the council with staff regarding the area of impact.
So May 5th, what time is that meeting? Is that a 3 to 5?
That's a 3 to 5.
Okay.
And then the April 17th will be at 5:30. And both of those will be here in this room.
April 17th is 5:30?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks, Bessie Joe.
Yes. And then on May 23rd is the kickoff to budget. And so we'll have that additional council priority setting that we cut short during the council's retreat. So I was planning for that to be here. If you guys want it offsite, I could schedule an offsite meeting for that priority setting for budgeting.
I'm good with being here. It's a budget meeting. It's not like, you know.
I know, I didn't know if you wanted it kind of like a,
yeah.
So.
What's your thoughts, Mike?
I agree. It's fun being there or in the Hirschberger room.
Okay. Colby?
Yep.
Okay, I think we're good on that.
Great. Those were the big highlights. I think everything else was already on the schedule.
Could I add, if it's possible, Bessie Joe, for that kind of roundtable discussion, if the Hirschberger room is available, I think that might be, that's a little better when we're working together discussing things than sitting in an oval versus sitting around a table, if it's possible.
For the
Yeah.
budget. Okay.
Yeah, it's would be my preference. I'd rather be looking at everybody than kind of, you know, since it's just us.
Good idea.
Just
We'll see. We'll see if it's available that day.
Great,
Yep.
thanks.
Okay, we ready to adjourn, council, or is there anything else staff would like to
I
share?
move we adjourn.
Thank you, Colby.
Second.
All right, all in favor of adjourning tonight's regular city council meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.